Let's waddle on back to our seats. Okay, I'm going to read what was read at the beginning, just because creating a safe place and a safe space at this town hall is important to SEAS and to the League of Women Voters. So from them, please remember that all of the panel members have willingly and enthusiastically agreed to participate in this conversation. Thank you. It is not a debate, and it should not be an argument. These issues will not be finalized tonight. Any battles we feel we must fight will not be won or lost here. Listening may convince you otherwise, or it may strengthen what you believe, but listening and talking to each other are why we are here. It is very important to maintain communication and interaction among our government representatives and our citizens. So I just want to take a quick poll. Raise your hand if you want to comment or ask a question this evening. Okay, so it's not everybody. If you raised your hand and you're not sitting over here, at this time I'd like to invite you up to just start the queue unless you'd rather sit and kind of wait for a while. But what I'm going to do is call on people as they sit in these chairs along the side in order as you come. And as people stand up, if the seats get to be pretty full, we're going to start shuffling you on down. So you stay awake and get out your nervous jitters if you're nervous to make your comment or question. Comments and questions are great, and this is the microphone where you're going to do it. And I'm going to give you up to a minute to make a comment or ask your question. How do you guys feel about that? So I would say that anything longer than a minute can be shared perhaps through alternative correspondence. But what we want to do is take the opportunity to be heard as well as have a dialogue with our representatives. So we're gonna shoot for that minute, and I'm gonna hold us all accountable with the red card. And then I'm gonna give you all a minute. And I think it's probably worth it to know that if somebody's saying what you've said, to really limit, how we respond. Because in this handout that we all have, there are a lot of topics to be discussed. So we've hit on 3, and that took an hour. So are we all in agreement that a minute for a question and comment and a minute per response, and you don't have to, the whole panel does not have to respond to every question or comment? Okay, well, let's get started. Shar. Also, please say your name when you come up to the microphone. Thank you.
My name is Charlotte Mates, and I'm a citizen of Moab, Grand County for the last 18 years. And my first question is directed to our Senator Hinkins, Representatives Watkins and Albrecht. And the question is directed towards the Medicaid expansion. I want to directly know how you plan to vote for the citizens and constituents of Grand County on Medicaid expansion. I would also like to ask you how you would feel if you did not have medical insurance of any kind. The second part of my question is directed to the second topic of this evening, and that's the Arches National Park issues of overcrowding. And I'd like to just touch on the fact that I think one of the possible solutions, and I know that Kate has been very instrumental in talking about this and dealing with it and looking at it, but we need to get adequate funding for transportation into the parks. Thank you.
First of all, Dr. Shiozawa was the one that ran the bill for full medical expansion, and only it wasn't completely full. I'm not in favor of the full blown Medicaid expansion, but I am in favor of taking care of those that it can't afford to, and as far as the CHIPS, I'm in favor of that for the children of Utah. And but I am in favor of expanding and at least get some of the money that we've sent. We send about $650 million a year there, and as long as there's not, I think it was about $450 million that would come back to us, and so we'd lose maybe $200 million if we didn't take the full Medicaid expansion. But after the assurity of 5 years, there's no telling where that could go. There wasn't a bottom to it or a top to it of where Medicaid expansion goes. So to protect the taxpayers and citizens of Utah, I was opposed to the full-blown Medicaid expansion. As far as the parks access, it's more of a federal issue than it would be a state issue. Like I said, representatives Utah State Parks were in favor of. If you limit the amount of people that can go into the federal parks, that means there'll be more coming to visit our state parks, and so that would help our budget immensely. So I'm in favor of that part of it. So.
I was on the Representative Albrecht and I were both on the Social Services Sub-Appropriation Committee last year, and we were the newbies to the group, and so we were learning a lot, and then we've been transferred to a different committee, so I was like, darn. But I was in a meeting the other night where Senator Van Tassel was talking about the Medicaid expansion and some of the things we have going there. And I will tell you, after being on that committee and meeting every day for hours, the budget for that, for our whole social services program in the state of Utah is to the point of being bigger than our education. And it is a huge issue. And I haven't been involved, because I just got elected again this last year, with that conversation. But I know that there are some real disadvantages of going to the full-blown expansion. But on our committee, we were working very, very hard to cover people that needed the help. Senator Hinkins and I first went in during the Great Recession. I'm going to tell you that nothing was more difficult than taking things back from people. And this year it was great because I got to see something given to people that we had taken back from them. So, and as far as the arches and stuff, I agree. It is a federal issue, and it's an issue that it seems to be that you guys are kind of working on pretty well. So, go team, go.
Okay, so on the question about health insurance, ma'am, it's sad for anybody to be without health insurance. I agree with you 100%. Second of all, the Medicaid expansion, as I mentioned earlier, is going to be an initiative that you folks will vote on come November of this year, if you get the number of signatures required to put it on the ballot. Therefore, if you want 0.15% sales tax increase to go towards Medicaid expansion, that's the way to do it. As far as the Park Service, we don't have much to do with that in the state, but I know they're receiving comments now, and I'd suggest that you get your comments into the Park Service. Thank you.
Is that true, Kate? You want to just talk really quickly about just to respond to continue the fact-finding mission comments? How can people comment to you?
We had the comment period open from November 4th until December 22nd. We extended it a couple of times. I'll see about doing it again, but I would also like opportunities. I'd like to be invited to address groups that have an interest so that I can make sure they have clarity on what is and what is not included in the proposal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Next question. Yes? Hello, fellow council member.
Emily, my name is Mike Duncan. I'm a brand new city council member. Myself and the other new council member and Emily all ran on affordable housing platforms. You guys know we have a problem down here, which is made worse by a lack of private land and wealthier out-of-town people buying up second homes and overnight rentals and so forth. So it was with great intrigue when I read the Salt Lake Tribune yesterday morning to find out that the legislature is apparently considering it as priority legislation this session to assess what they called incentivize towns and counties across the state their consideration of affordable housing ordinances in an effort to, it's all about raising money, all right, because apparently because of Operation Rio Grande, they've kicked a bunch of people out, which Jim will tell you some of those folks have showed up here. So they want to build 3 new shelters and they need money for it. So what can you tell me about this? Because we're doing everything that we can and we won't take kindly the idea of funding shelters for the Wasatch Front. At least I won't.
Good question. Who'd like to respond?
Well, one of the things that I think you're talking about is the $10 million the legislature gave to the Salt Lake City basically to help with the housing and relocation of some of the people that's down on the Rio Grande area. When they passed the resolution or the bill, I shouldn't say a resolution, it was actually a funding of the bills at the last night of the session. I got up and spoke and I said, well, do you think the only place has problems or issues like this is Salt Lake City? I mean, I represent Carbon County and they have more problems than even Salt Lake probably, and they're not going to get anything out of it, same as Grand County or San Juan County. San Juan County has the highest unemployment of 15% in the state, and Salt Lake County is like 2 or 3% unemployment, and so but there's nothing coming our way, and so I brought that issue up. Nothing was said about it. Don't have the votes. But another thing that we are trying to do is with the state institutional trust lands with Utah State University is to try to get affordable housing, especially for student housing and things like that. We had the president of Utah State here, about a month or 2 ago that met with us. And she's behind us 100%, I think, in order to try to get it. We have the state institutional trust land state here that was here to try to free up the ground that's south of town to be able to put a new campus, Utah State campus. And we are not able to get the funding this year, but we're hopeful for next year. The Utah State had another building that was a priority that they had to have, but that's coming. The budget to Utah State is about $2.5 million for the campus here, and we're trying to get that increased all the time. And one of the things that we would do is be able to have the state institutional trust lands come up with some property that would, because we're going to get the utilities out there, and that's one of the big things is to try to get affordable housing for the employers and especially for more students to be able to come down here and go to school, and also the residents here. So I hope that answers some of your question.
Did you? Yes.
I just saw that too, so I can't speak to it because, you know, we have over 1,000 bills filed and we have things going on. But I will say one of the bills that I supported very strongly last year was, I believe it was House Bill 35, Representative Becky Edwards, and she had worked on this for a number of years. And it was to give a tax incentive that I know he doesn't always care for to construction companies to build low-income housing or more moderate-income housing. Again, the issue you have here is land, I'm sure. But part of that was like 25% of it was to be allocated for only rural areas. Because what happens a lot of times is the urban areas take all of this funding. And so one of the reasons I supported it was because money was being set aside for rural areas to build the housing that we need. And when I started campaigning down here in 2008, I heard about this then, and it's not any better, and I understand that, but it's like that. There doesn't seem to be a magic bullet, and we're just going to have to just keep working on it.
I kind of want to respond to why I'm opposed to tax incentives, because 100% of our income taxes go to the schools, to our education system. That's where $6 billion, that's where most of it's generated from, is income taxes. And anytime you start giving businesses and people tax incentives, it comes out of income taxes, and the kids is subsidizing all that, in my opinion. And if they want to come up with other subsidies, fine, take it out of the general fund, but don't take it out of the kids, out of income taxes, and take it away from our schools. Our schools struggle as it is, and I hate to see more money taken away from it for tax credits.
One of the things we've done in Utah that's created a real low-income housing problem is just what the senator just said. We've incentivized a lot of businesses to come to the state, particularly and they locate on the Wasatch Front. And they're good-paying jobs, and so those folks, they're fine. They go build them a new home or buy a home that's already existing. What it's done is it's created a real housing problem for low-income folks. And the state needs to address this somehow, and I think Representative Edwards' bill did that somewhat. I know in the central part of the state, there's some low-income money that became available from the feds, and 3 counties went in together, Paiute, Sevier, and Wayne, and built some housing in Richfield, and depending on your income, they built probably 150 units. You can get into those, and so I'd like to know who this representative or senator was. I'll do some research and find out, but I need to look into that more. But we do have a real low-income housing problem, and you folks have got one of the most exacerbated ones here, because you've got all these new motels and restaurants and people coming here to work and nowhere to put them. And Ruby's Inn, down at the gateway of Bryce Canyon, kind of a unique situation there. They built their own employee housing because they couldn't find it locally. So, you know, that cost money, but the family did it themselves.
Without tax incentives.
Go ahead.
Okay, so first off, raise your hand if you've heard me talk about affordable housing too many times. Okay, so I won't give you the whole spiel. You know, it's a multifaceted problem that lots of communities are dealing with, but I just want to touch on one very narrow slice of the problem, and I'm going to throw out a few phrases that many folks are probably sick of hearing me say, but I want to tie together the concept of business development and tax incentives. Because for me, housing is economic development. It's the backbone of every community, and it's central to any community's economic development efforts. And I think there's an opportunity for us to work with our state representatives, and I've started working with the elected officials in Grand County and the city of Moab on this idea, and I'd love to continue this conversation with you all. As you know, the state of Utah offers quite a few tax incentives for businesses to either expand in Utah or relocate to Utah. And these are all post-performance tax incentives, so you do what you say you're going to do, and then the state will give you a business income tax credit, not a personal income tax credit. So that's how we've lured many of the big companies on the Wasatch Front. What I would like to see happen is that housing is added to the list of eligible capital expenditures for tax credits when it is tied to job creation and business development. In a community like ours, where housing is the primary hurdle for businesses relocating or expanding in our community, it makes a lot of sense to tie those two items together. And so certainly there are some nuances to work out, but I think that's a real opportunity to address a prominent challenge here.
Okay, let's move on. Thank you, Mike. If you want, since you asked your question, you can go sit, or you can move to the end of the line if you've got something else to ask. Cassie, come on up.
Okay, so this question kind of popped into my mind when Mary and Ronnie were talking about how they support a reservation system at Arches, but they also support a new national monument in the Bears Ears. So what makes you think that by making Bears Ears a national monument, they wouldn't be just facing the same problems we're facing right now?
They would not be facing our problems right now because it took us years to get here.
I mean in the future. I mean in the future.
But we are the trailblazers. We are facing these problems and we're working very hard to find solutions. So we're the trailblazers. We're going to lead the way so that Bears Ears and other monuments and parks will have a roadmap to prevent these problems from coming. It will also help our situation by spreading the tourism out. But no, it would, we can create the roadmap to help them.
I'm not suggesting they wouldn't or couldn't eventually have the same problems depending on how you plan ahead. But we all learn from each other, and one of the things we've learned is that people are always looking for new places to go, and recreation can create jobs, and a recreation-based economy is historically more reliable than an extraction-based economy, which seems to experience more booms and busts historically when you compare the two. So it's definitely possible, as if you look at the history of tourist economies, or across the Intermountain West, other parts of the community as well, places are popular and places will get busy. So part of the challenge over time is to know that's something you need to look out for and look for other places for people to go, and to know there's a quality of experience. But there's nothing to say that that won't happen. We've seen it other places. We're part of that historical repetition, of that pattern.
I would just add one quick note that many communities that are experiencing sort of a bust cycle of the natural resources market globally, with or without a national monument or a national park or public lands, are trying to find ways to bolster their economies through outdoor recreation and tourism. And I'm not going to get into whether that's the best strategy or not, but what I would say is that any community that is exploring that as an economic development strategy needs to look at it in the context of a larger economic development effort. Tourism is not economic development in and of itself. It's one piece of a pie, and if you focus exclusively on tourism and recreation, you remain vulnerable over time. And in some ways, our community has traded one mono-economy for another, and so a lot of our economic development efforts right now are focused on diversification of our industry set here. It's not to the exclusion or detriment to our tourism economy, but we need to find ways to make ourselves more resilient to global shocks or even regional shocks.
Next question. I was noticing there was a little conversation happening outside, and we all may feel like we want to talk to our neighbor while we're going through this, and if you do, outside in the hallway and close the door is a good place to do that. Thanks. No, you've got the floor.
I am Sue Kirkham, and I'm on the board of directors for Moab Regional Hospital, and I'm not going to ask you about Medicaid, but this is just for our 3 legislative representatives. But I would like to ask you about the funding, federal funding for the federally qualified health centers, as well as CHIP funding. Federal funding is running out in March. And if there isn't a reauthorization, do you think would there be any provision for funding these 2 areas in our state, since we have a clinic in Moab, in Green River, there's one in central Utah, and also a lot of children that participate in CHIP. Thank you.
Well, we do have a rainy day fund, and that's the reason for a rainy day fund. Sometimes we get criticized in the legislature for not spending it, because we do have it, but in 2009 during the downturn, we were fortunate enough to have $800 million in our rainy day fund, and that's what it's for crises like that. I don't foresee that happening as far as the CHIPS program goes. I've checked with our new Congressman John Curtis, and the messages he has back there, it will be funded. A lot of things may not be funded federally, but I can assure you, they've assured me that that's one of the things that will be funded. I hope so. I mean, it's very important to rural Utah, and he's aware of that, and as well as our other congressman, Bishop. They represent a big portion of rural Utah, and I know we get criticized sometimes for, say, like gerrymandering in our areas and stuff like that, but one thing about it, when you take in when you have part of your constituents, urban constituents, and some of them rural constituents, it really does help. To just have an urban constituency does not give you a very good perspective of the way it is. Now, my biggest constituents is in Springville City. Although I represent 6 counties, probably half of the population of my district is probably in Utah County. I represent Carbon, Emery, Grand, San Juan, and Wasatch County in Utah County. Sorry about that. But anyway, but it gives you a good perspective because you hear from all your constituents of that, and so, you know, I think it'll happen. State of Utah, we do have provision to take care of that.
And I appreciate those legislators that have gone before me and established that rainy day fund, and I think we'll be putting some money in that again this year from what I understand. But to answer your question, I've talked to a representative that just got elected, what's his name? Curtis, and also Stewart's office, and they are in favor of reauthorizing CHIP and doing some of this other stuff. So I think it'll be authorized.
Okay. Thanks for asking that question. I might have asked it. Next question. Good to see you.
My name is Kelly Green. I'm a lifelong resident of southeastern Utah, both Grand and San Juan. I am of mixed heritage, and I just want to say that I do applaud your effort on the legislation to pass a resolution on the reduction of the Bears Ears issue, Shashja. It is an emotional issue for many Native people, both on one side and the other, and also for many of the people here, because we see the land as being very important to all of us. And this is more of an outside question for the legislators here. What we're seeing in southeastern Utah is this heavy impact in our tourism industry. We understand why people come here. They love this place. We love it too. That's why we live here, and that's why we've tried to adapt in a variety of occupations. So funding, I'm always hearing about, we want funding for Medicaid, we want funding for this and that, but our infrastructure inside our city and our county is being heavily impacted. And it's a real problem because we're always trying to figure out how can we deal with all these people coming. One solution that I want to propose to you, there's been some talk about UTV regulations, ATV, all of those motorized machines are required to have OHV fees. They're charged $30 a machine. What I would like to have you consider in the future is maybe looking at our bicycles that come here. There's probably at least 1 million bicycles a year that come. If you charged them $10 a bicycle, that would be $10 million. And that's one thing you might want to consider. I would urge you to look at that strongly. By the crowd out here, how many of you have bicycles? Raise your hands. There you go. That's going to pay for our infrastructure.
You're a fundraiser.
Consider that. Thank you.
One of the things that is in the process in regards to that is Representative Noel, who represents San Juan County as well as Kane and Garfield County, is going to be an offset fee for highway vehicles of $35, and then there's also, which will raise it from $30 to $35, and also sets street legal all-terrain vehicles registration at $49. So that is in the process of that. There has been talk about bicycle taxes, especially on, to help pay for the roads, because a lot of the places are putting in bike trails along the highways and things like that. I personally haven't considered that because, a lot of the bikes that are sold are to children, and I think a lot of the, you start taking away from that, they're not really tearing up the highways. I guess it's one way to get revenue. I'd rather the county impose that themselves if that's what they elect to do. But most of where I live in Emory County, a lot of the kids can't afford bikes anyway, possibly, and they start adding more taxes onto it. I just hate taxes, period, if you want to know the truth. So I'm not a tax person, but I don't know. I understand that it has to be, and we've done a thing for the road tax for infrastructure for the highways and for the cities and stuff, and that was one of the fuel taxes that we raised the fuel tax, which hadn't been done for 20 years, and so it's on a percentage. So we do need highways, and we all want to have nice roads and not potholes. It's hard on our cars and vehicles, so with that, that's about it.
Oh goody, we have more people. Joe, come on up.
I'm Joe Kingsley, and I am an old fart, and I have been here doing real estate for decades. I've retired. But the last year of my active part as a real estate agent was extremely emotionally downgrading. And since we're talking about Medicare, I would like to bring this complaint, if you please, that you're talking about extension. Many people don't realize whenever you're sick and you're looking at the tunnel and possibly the end of the tunnel, and you're given a minimum of 5 pages to sign when you get Medicaid. And the very last page, small print, is the Recovery Act. And when you sign this, it gives the state of Utah the ability to take all your personal property to pay for those medical bills. Many people don't realize that. Since you're modifying this act, I strongly recommend you look at the Recovery Act. And I personally have sued the state of Utah over this, and I won. But I was representing one of my clients. And to me, it's inhumane. Thank you.
Thank you as well, but I think the thing that they've talked about, the expanding, was the Medicaid and not Medicare. Medicare, I don't think that's been the topic. It's mostly been Medicaid. And you can look at the three of us, we're in your age group as well, so speaking to the choir on that. So I mean, nobody wants to take from, my parents are still alive, one's 86 and one's 85. And I know what you're saying. When they go into the rest home, they would sell their property to pay for their expenses if they haven't prepared for that. And I hate to say it, but I think that socially we should look out for ourselves to some degree. I understand that if you don't have anything, then the state should take care of it. But if you're sitting there with assets that you could be able to pay for your own, going to a care center and stuff. And so I sympathize with those that haven't taken care of it. But I also feel that we have a social obligation to take care of those that can't. But if you're sitting there with assets, that's the reason that they sell your property off.
You be quick.
Comment, sir, is my experience is if a person has a lot of assets, they also have an attorney. And if they know that they're going to be in hospice or have a terminal situation, they will their property before they go to the hospital to their family, and they end up personally with nothing. And that was the reason I sued the state, because they were taking property from, anyway, it was detailed. But the system is flawed because people with assets are legally able to protect the assets. It's the person who is not legally savvy is the ones who get taken advantage of. The law is flawed. In my opinion, it's immoral.
That sounds like something to look into. Another question, Principal K.
Hi, thanks for being here. My name's Taryn Kay, and I'm the principal of HMK Elementary. Hi, Christine. How are you? And I just wanted to ask for your increased support with education, but I wanted to share a really quick little thing. My favorite comment of the whole night is sitting directly behind me is a 5th grade student. And she and her mom were talking about why she was here. And her mom said, because this is the founding of our country and this is democracy in action. So I think that's really cool. And I just wanted to please encourage those of you at the state level to please fully fund enrollment growth. And also 5.5% WPU would be awesome, because what always happens is any WPU increase ends up going, everything gets rolled in, and then the things we're paying out of other things we end up having to take out of that increase. And when we go to talk to teachers about a raise, or because affordable housing impacts us too, then all of those items come out of the WPU, and then the raise is really very minimal. And then, I know Emily, I'm hurrying.
Yeah, let's lift it up.
5 years for to and from busing would be really great. And then please, please, please fund our necessarily existent small schools. So, and I don't know if you want to talk about your support of education, but thank you for being here, appreciate it.
I was at an educational meeting the other night, and Senator Van Tassel was there, and he's on the Appropriations Committee, and he says we will be fully funding growth, that the WPU will be between 3 and 5. You know how that goes. And that the nest schools will get at least $3 million. And so that's really important, because sometimes they get down there, and we know how important they are for our areas out here. And you know I'm for education, because I worked for the teachers down here. So certainly do everything I can to support that. And you know how Senator Hinkins feels.
Yeah. Of the $300 million new monies that's coming into education from income taxes and things that people are making more money, and of the $300 million, $253 million of that's going to go into education. The rest, $50 million, will go into the rainy day fund, which protects us down the road because of the increase. So $121 million will increase the WPU, and we also are going to pay down our debt. We have some debt which will be saving us interest in the long run, and so some of the money is going to go there. But last year we raised the WPU 4%, and we hope to be able to do that again. So.
What's WPU?
Weighted pupil unit. And as far as I'm concerned, my wife was a former educator, and she's my education consultant, and she has my ear. Okay? But one thing all you folks need to consider too is the Our Schools Now initiative, another one of those 5 initiatives that you'll be voting on in November if they get their signatures, and I think they will, which will bring $750 million from a tax increase into the budget. There'll be a lot of pros and cons on TV and radio if those signatures are gathered before the ballot in November. As it stands now, I think 85% of that would go to public education and 15% to higher ed. So be aware of that initiative.
Yeah.
I would love to ask a follow-up question, since you brought up the Our Schools Now initiative. And this is somewhat hypothetical, but assuming that the Our Schools Now initiative passes, and we see increased funding for education, one of the chief concerns I've heard from education advocates is that if that passes, the Utah legislature would potentially modify the existing allocations that are in place for education. Can you just comment on what you've heard about, other legislators' ideas on, if the Our Schools Now initiative passes and what that might mean for existing education funding?
Well, we're talking about health and human services, and probably our biggest, other than education, is our biggest budget item. And it takes probably about 30% of this current state budget, so I'm sure that if you open the doors to move money around, there's only so much money and it's got to go someplace. And so if education, they bills get more than what they're entitled to, or what, you know, we've got people that are getting aged as well, and money has to go. We've heard people talk about Medicaid, Medicare, and to take care of those, it takes money too. And so, you know, there's only, the pot's only so big, and you know, you guys know as city and county administrators that something's going to, and so that, you know, something's going to lose. I would think. So I would hope not. I would hope that, you know, if it's dedicated to education, which that's, you know, all like I said, state income taxes, whether it's federal or personal, is dedicated to education, and so we can't mess with that. So I would hope that that would stay there, that part of it. Your county taxes, you could mess that around with your property taxes and move it around too. So it's as much county and a county option as it would be a state option as well.
Can I do a quick temperature check? Because I got warm, but I don't know, I'm the only one standing. Well, that's not true. Got a couple standers in the back there. Are you all okay with temperature? It felt warm to me. There's just a lot of us still here on a Friday night. Okay, okay? Show me if you're okay. Temperature. Okay. Most of you. Come on up. Unless anybody wanted to say anything else about education, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry.
Hi, my name's McKenna Koki. I grew up here in Moab and I still live here, and I don't want to be the last one to speak, so I hope somebody else will come up in a moment. I know the topic is about Utah's exemption from the Antiquities Act. That kind of inevitably here leads us to a conversation about San Juan County and about Bears Ears. And I more just have a comment or an expression that as a resident and a constituent, it's really important to me that we consider the uniqueness of Bears Ears and the tribal component that is unique to Bears Ears National Monument and the 5 tribes that have come together to express their thoughts about it, and that it's important to me that when you all talk about it, that that's a big piece of this puzzle.
Does anybody want to respond?
I wasn't sure if that was a question or just
It's
a statement.
comment.
Just a comment. Okay. Yeah, thank you.
But you're free to respond, or we can move on to the next question, if we've got one. While you're thinking about whether or not you're going to come up here because you're nervous, I want to give Representative Watkins 2 minutes. She's got a story to tell, and it's a story that is pretty cool.
Close to the end of last session, I received an email. I'm sorry, I've forgotten his name, but he's a volunteer fireman from up in Castle Valley. And he said, you know, we've got a real problem. We have to report all our financial information to, and I don't know whether it's the county or it must be the county. And he said, then we have to turn around and do the same thing, but in a different format for the state, just for the fact that somebody might want to look at it sometime, transparency. And he said, we're volunteers. Wow, this is pretty imposing on us. And so I said, well, it's too late to do anything now. We just need to amend the bill that created this, and I'll get on it, and the minute we can file bills, I'll get that filed. And so I found out the bill that required that, which was just passed in 2016, and I think it was May 8th, we were able to file our bills. It was the first bill that I filed, and it is now done and ready to go. It was a little more complicated than we thought because there is nothing in state statute that defines what a volunteer fireman or fire department is. So we had to do all of that, and my bill will exempt volunteer fire departments from having to do 2 of those reports, of which one is very different. We have well over 250 volunteer fire departments in the state, and you got to remember that word volunteer, and all the stuff that they do to protect lives and our homes and property. And then we're going to say to them, we want you to do this. But apparently a lot of them weren't anyway. And so it was like, well, what do we do? Fire them? Oh, they're volunteers. So that'll be probably the very first bill that I present in committee, and I hope to get it passed, and it came from Grand County.
So the process works. We speak up, we contact a representative, we work together to either create an amendment or propose a bill, and then we get to work together. All right, step on up to the mic.
My name's Ron Irvin. I've only lived here 10 years. My wife grew up here. But there's comments earlier about preparing for the future for your medical situations. The problem with that is every time you get your stuff set up, the government changes the rules and pushes it on down the road. The last administration changed Social Security, which everybody that works pays into. And now it's listed as an entitlement and not your what you've paid into to get when you retire. And granted, that's a federal thing more than anything else, but it plays into what you're talking about, Medicare, Medicaid, and all of that other stuff, and your hospital expenses here in town, should something happen. Thank you.
Does anybody on the panel would like to respond to the comment? Thank you. Oh, Bill. Well, you're kind of jumping the line here, you know. There's two people, but I'm going to let this happen because you're the reason we all got together. All right. I'll remember you. Yes.
My name is Tyler Moreau. I've lived here my whole life, and I just feel like saying on the subject of the exemption from the Antiquities Act, just as a young person who hopes to be on this earth for a much longer time, that I've seen what people can do to land that isn't protected, especially down here in southern Utah, and I feel that it's very important for lands to be federally protected, and I believe that the Antiquities Act is the best way to do that, just for you to have an opinion from somebody who's, well, younger than the majority of people who speak.
It's good to have a diverse demographic. Thanks for the comment.
Mayor, I don't know about the rest of the panel, but I'm offended.
Oh, H.
That's a lot of courage. Good job.
Okay, come on up. Good to see you.
My name is Rick Fulham. I've been in Moab since '85 continuously. I came here in 1977. And since I only have a minute, I'm only going to address one thing, and that's the cake. How much do you want for an entrance fee? Hmm? 25. So it's down from 80. Okay, it was 70. Okay. Kate says, okay, but Kate says there's been a 91% increase in visitation to the park. I think I have an answer to that problem. Stop advertising. Stop advertising.
Panel, I'm going to let Kate respond first, and then we can respond.
First of all, I have to say, we don't advertise. The state does. The Utah Office of Tourism is phenomenal. And if you look at the growth chart, and I have one back here if anybody would like to visit with me at that back table after the meeting. It was in 2013 when the state initiated the Mighty 5 campaign, and that's when our visitation took off and hit 90%. So we don't. I try to push him out onto BLM.
So, did you want to follow up with that? Same topic though? Because same topic, okay.
You described the advertising as wonderful. I describe it as depleting the quality of life of this town. Does anybody agree with me? There's too much advertising going on, and if we slow it down, we won't have as big a problem as affordable housing, which is a lot of bull. There's no answer to affordable housing other than raising wages. And when you invite so many people to this town, and you look at people in City Market that look like blood's about to come out of their eyes because there's so many people here and they're not being paid for it. They don't get a raise. And look what's happening. The police don't get a raise. The whole community is being over-advertised. How do you quit it? How do we stop it? How do we,
So, hold on before Kate. I just want to see if anybody is here, Elaine, or anybody here from the Travel Council. We don't have anybody here from the Travel Council? Okay.
Let me offer this. We have understood for some time that the advertising that the Utah Office of Tourism did, and when I say they're wonderful, they do it wonderfully well. We know. But when we raised our concerns about with the Utah Office of Tourism, they changed to a new effort, which is the Roads to the Mighty Five. And that was to develop tourism in counties along the way and outside of the Big Five national parks. And I think it's been fairly successful. So I think they're not oblivious to it, and they have shifted, and they'll continue to shift. I'll be up there next week, and I'll be talking to them, among others. But they do listen, and they have ceased that Mighty Five campaign as such.
Can I also, since we're fact-finding, Kate, one more question, because there's been confusion. So 2 things are happening, and one is you and one is not you with respect to arches. So I just would like to give you 1 minute to separate the two for us so that we understand.
Might you be referring to raising entrance fees?
Yes, entrance fees versus
Yeah, the reservation system is entirely separate from raising entrance fees. There is a proposal that came out at the national level, which came out on a Monday. I heard about it on a Friday afternoon, to raise the entrance fees in 17 national parks during the busy season. And while I understand the purpose of that, which is to maximize fee revenues to parks, I'm fearful that that will really represent, for many of our people who are trying to come into the parks, a choice between paying our current $25 entrance fee or paying $70. And that's a big difference. And parks are for people. We don't want to price people out of visiting.
Okay. Thank you for making those comments, because I think it's important for us to at least know what you're in control of, what you're not, and what your positions are with them.
I can make a decision reasonably well on the reservation system or not when the time comes. I don't have a voice in the entrance fee question. That's being done at the national level.
Let's go, panel.
So I was, can you hear me? Yeah, there it is. In my first year on the county council, I served on the travel council advisory board. Jalen Hawks will be the new member, but I witnessed the mushroom cloud that erupted in my chambers over the transient room tax issue and debate. And I think these are all related. The promotion and the advertising of the parks has created some problems. From the county finance side, you would say, well, our fund balance, our rainy day fund, grew from roughly $1 million to now 3.5. $2.5 million, is I would say it's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things for a lot of the issues that the county has to manage and mitigate. it has provided, to just say stop advertising, I think is a little bit generalized. Marketing 101, and there's track records in Colorado where resort economies and communities, when they dial back their promotion to a certain extent, other communities and think, man, that was a quick 2 minutes, step in to take that place. And so I think, you know, the upward mobility and what it's done for the economy and the county's ability to provide its service for the taxpayers has done some great things. I definitely think we're at a point where it's fair to, we're not an immature tourism economy. We're very mature, we're very successful. And I have a question for you. Are we going to be able to touch on these issues that we haven't quite yet? Because if not, I'm going to start connecting all kinds of dots.
Okay, well, I tell you what, if we don't get questions anymore, then we can, as a panel, yes, go down and talk about these topics.
There's a lot of good issues.
We have a lot of good topics in our community, we do. And this is really a good opportunity for, you know, all of us to have conversation and really get questions from all of you out there. So, Poppy, Bill, sorry. Well, you were technically next in line, and you told me to hold your spot, so I'm doing it.
I would like to speak quickly on what was said about tourism and Moab and Grant County. It's a real double-edged sword. I mean, we have things in our county now that we wouldn't have if it hadn't been for tourism and money from, you know, good, from our aquatic center and different types of things that we have because of our that improves quality of life in this community. At the same time, we're being overrun by tourism. And the advertisement is a problem. And part of the problem is that when we get our transient room tax, the formula is developed to give more, we as a county get more money from the transient room tax than they get for advertising. But we are a mature economy. We're a mature tourist economy. We're not fledgling and we're not just starting. And so I would like to see the state look at changing the formula for transient room tax so that when you become a mature tourist economy, more of the transient room tax goes to the counties to deal with the impact of the tourism rather than having it go to the further advertising. At the same time, realizing that because the transient room tax goes up, we're not going to lose our money to promote our community. We need to promote it on some level, but not to the extent that we have. Thank you.
Sure.
Just a comment on that. Representative Noel has a bill. It's boxcar bill right now and hasn't been opened up, but he's from Kanab, and they have the same problem you've got, maybe to a lesser extent. But when Vicki Varela became the office of tourism director and started this Mighty Five campaign, your point is well taken. I mean, you've been overrun, basically. Arches, Zion, and Bryce all have these problems with infrastructure created in the community. The problems, roads, sewer, water, you name it. And I just want you folks to know that as Utah grows, and we are the fastest growing state, that these rural legislators are going to become less and less, there'll be less of them. Those folks are locating on the Wasatch Front in those voter districts, and they're going to have more representatives, and that's the way it's going to be. And so we need your help in the legislature to fight those urban versus rural battles.
Go for it.
Emily, I just want to add really briefly.
Stand up, I'm sorry.
I know it's sometimes helpful for people to understand what the TRT, a lot of you have been following it for a while, so you probably know this, but on the city level, with the money we get for the TRT, we're different than the county. So they have only very specific things they can spend it on, but we can actually put our share, and our share is smaller than the city, in the general fund. But I just wanted our representatives to know, because I know it's helpful for you to know when the city and the county are on the same page, and I can't, obviously, as one member, speak for our whole council, but my guess would be that, you know, we are all very supportive of trying to help the county have more flexibility, because we see the implications of these problems they're dealing with every day, whether it's in the city or county.
Well, Senator Stevenson, Senate Bill 36 is a new bill that's going to be out, and according to the state statute, right now, state sales revenues are distributed to cities on a 50-50 split between the point of sales and population. And if this bill is passed, it would change the way local sales taxes, including county-imposed transient room taxes, are distributed. And so I would suggest that we get with Senator Howard Stevenson's, that's his bill, Senate Bill 36. And so if this way it's going to be distributed, it would be according to that. But the bill is going to eliminate the hold harmless language that allows certain small cities that keep 75% of the point of sales right now. And the only cities that included was Riverdale, Rhinehead, and Alta. So I would suggest that we get with them and make those changes. Howard Stevenson.
Will you help us also?
It could be Jerry, but it's Senate Bill 36, and I'll find out about that. So.
Can we get your help on that as well?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay.
I just need to know, because we've got other people that owns businesses and stuff that are very much opposed to this as well. So keep in mind, you've got people living in this area, I mean, telling me to do one thing, and then you've got a group that's telling me to do the other. So you've got mixed signals for us as legislators, because we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. And so we just kind of need to know. You need to get your input to us and to the other people, because I'm one out of 29 votes. And so even if you get me sold on the idea, that's still got a long ways to go.
We are going to do that. We are going to work together, and we are going to have. We're going to do that for you.
I understand, but I'm just saying there's other people that's wants to keep their businesses going as well, and so if you start taking away their customers, they don't like that either. So
we're going to cooperate and do that for you. Hold on. Bill Topper, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor Emily. One thing, just a comment, one thing Moab could advertise as an asset that we've experienced here over the last few minutes is that the women clearly rule this town. I want to get I know we have a long, there you go. I know we have a long list of important topics, and we need more town halls, clearly. But we've underused an asset that we have here among all these talented people, and that's Police Chief Winder. And so I would like to ask the question, really off topic, but what do you see as the biggest problems for your department, and how can the citizens really help that, other than drinking less and driving more slowly? And you only have a minute.
Well, I thought I was going to get through the evening just quietly observing. First of all, I'm honored and privileged to be here with this esteemed group, and I appreciate the opportunity to mention just a few things from the local perspective that I have seen. We talked a little bit about affordable housing that can take on so many iterations. One of the things we are suffering from is the inability of me to recruit individuals to come and live in our community because they cannot find places to live. That has to be overcome, and I think there are a number of ways to do that. On the Wasatch Front, this was alluded to some extent, but some of the ways to incentivize developers to build housing for critical infrastructure folks, in other words, teachers, paramedics, law enforcement. There are some mechanisms that I think legislatively have already been adopted and could be imposed here in the community to ensure that as there is growth, there is some carve-outs for those kinds of personnel. They're very, very important. The use of CDA and RDAs is also another factor that I think is very, very important. The biggest issue that I think we face in the community, in addition to recruiting problems, is narcotics, is the use of illicit substances here in our community. Because of the generational poverty and the impacts that that has here, the use of illicit substances, especially in our schools, is outrageous. And we need some help from both the state and the federal resources to look at some interventions down here, not just that are enforcement-based, but are educational-based. And I hope that we can work with the legislature and focus on communities like Moab, like Blanding, like Monticello, and other communities where this is just a huge, huge issue. We have so many wonderful kids here, but we also have so many kids that are at risk. So from my standpoint, the Moab Police Department has to work very concertedly with our legislative supporters and the county to ensure that our children have something to do after school and have mentors that can provide them assistance. Also, just on a total mind jump here, I know that on the agenda is issues about UTVs and ATVs. Law enforcement is caught between a little bit of a rock and a hard place on that, because many of our residents here are very frustrated about the use of our roadways for that, and they don't understand, I think, often the dilemma that we're all in, and that is that when the legislation passed to allow these vehicles on the road, they opened it up entirely for them. They're not carve out laws and regulations that we can apply to ATVs and UTVs. We have to treat them very much like any other vehicle on the road. And I've been working with the county and others to try and identify some language that allows local options for some reasonable regulations, specifically as it relates to noise ordinances. Not speed, necessarily, because the speed, I think, is mistaken, because they see these loud vehicles go by and people think it's fast, when really what it is oftentimes our noise issues. So just take the opportunity here, since I was given it, to throw out a few of those issues. And the last thing I'll just say is I sure love this community, and I'm so impressed with tonight's conversation on all sides, and I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Are you just trying to do less work? I mean, talking about education, you're just trying to reduce your workload here. That's ironically awesome. Panel? Does anybody want to make a comment as well?
Just on the UTV issue, as you can see, we have some really sharp and capable people approaching that issue, and I think they're taking the right avenue. One thing that it's important to keep in mind, if you go home and you Google Nikola Motor Company, they just released an electric UTV that outperforms combustion engines. It's going to take a while for these things to be fully implemented, but in the next 50 years, you're going to see a mainstream implementation from diesel and gasoline to electric and hydrogen, because they're performing better, frankly. And as those price points come down, you're going to start to see those kinds of applications everywhere. And UTVs, as we're already seeing models. So I guess when we're approaching regulations and solutions, it's important to understand the free market and the innovation that's taking place that mitigates a lot of these concerns.
Unless there's other comments, I want to go to another question. Are we good? Okay, come on in.
My name is Tiffany Van Sickle, and just as an aside, I'm Four Corners Substance Use Prevention Coordinator, so Chief Winder, you're awesome. I think you're amazing. But my question was to the extent, this is my 4th year here, but my great-grandparents' homestead is in Emery County, and so I have a great deal of roots that go into this community. And to the discussion of not advertising to have any more tourists, my family owns a campground that very much benefits from those continued tourists coming in, but I also work for Four Corners, our behavioral health institution, that very much sees the back end of what that means. So, and I think a lot of this gets to what Zachariah alluded to of a mono economy and where we can go in terms of diversification. So I just wanted to open that to the panel, both to our local officials on where your visions are for diversification and trying to balance some of these loads, but then also what that looks like in terms of working with our state partners on opening roads to us doing that diversification.
This is Ronnie, and I'm just actually going to pass off to the county because thanks to your county officials, they, in their latest budget, just funded an economic development position officially, so I'm going to pass it on.
She stole my thunder. But yes, we're very excited. Zachariah Levine is now our economic developer, and we are looking for resiliency, I'm having a hard time saying that, more as well as diversity. We need to have a resilient economy, and that means a diverse economy. And so now we have someone at the helm that will be able to help us meet those goals. So thank you. And I want to thank everybody that's here. We are an amazing community. This is unreal. I don't think any other community would see this kind of turnout for a town hall meeting when it's not contentious. So thank you very much. And if you want to get some help on public speaking, which makes me very nervous, I would like to invite you to attend the Toastmasters open house the 17th of this month on Wednesday. It will start at 11:45, and we would love to see a lot of you come. It's at Zions Bank. Thank you.
So we've got a question, but I just, show of hands, how many questions do we have left? So,
Hey, Emma.
yeah.
We have 2 more comments on that issue, but we need to hear from our economic development.
Okay.
And I'll make mine quick. So I just, economic development and economic diversification is a priority that we budgeted for it. And I just want to say thank you, but also encourage the city when they amend their budget or they do their budgeting this year. We would love to have you contribute financially to the effort. And I mean that from my heart. Economic development, what's interesting in the comments I'll say is that I did some traveling to conferences and have been working with Zachariah and really engaging in economic diversification. And what you're seeing around the state and what I saw at a conference in Denver where Appalachia and coal-reliant economies, their idea of economic diversification is what we just did in the last 2 decades. It's entrepreneurialism, outdoor recreation, tourism, small business. And so we're really on the tip of the spear for rural Utah as far as what's Moab 3.0, what does that look like? And it's important that we succeed and that that's a model that other rural economies that are behind us in this journey can replicate. And with that, I'll pass that off to our new Economic Development Director.
Okay, so I am the new Community and Economic Development Director for the county. It's a really exciting time. It was a bit of a windy path to get to this point, and I'm really grateful that the County Council has formally prioritized economic development. I had been doing some economic development, foundational work for a couple of years while my title was still Community Development Director, in part because I think it's just so intimately connected to land use planning, but also really important for our community in particular to get past this hurdle of a mono economy. For a long time we've talked about oil and gas or tourism, not really much in between, nothing beyond. So I'll just mention 2 things at this point because I know there are some other questions and I will get cut off at 2 minutes and 15 seconds. And the first is that I think one cornerstone element of our economic development efforts going forward is USU Moab. That connects a lot of dots for us. The first part is workforce development. Right now we are job rich in one particular area, and we've got a lot of knowledge and skills and experiences in that area, but we don't have the knowledge, skills, and abilities that are needed to diversify our economy. And so we need to make sure that our workforce is trained in those areas that we're going to pursue and adequately and start developing career paths with multiple steps along the way that are pretty evident at the start. And the second part, which is more broad, is that our office has come up with a draft strategy and action plan for economic development because we need a guide. We need something that's going to guide and benchmark our efforts so that we can see if we're making progress in the areas that we want to. And this is really connected to a vision for Moab's community, It's related to housing, it's related to infrastructure, it's related to education, quality of life, all of these things. And so going forward, you'll see some public discussion and conversation about what's included in that draft plan. We'll be putting that draft plan on our website if it's not already up there. And I would encourage you to reach out to me in our office about what you see in that plan that you like, what you dislike, what you'd like to change or bolster up, because this is definitely a community effort, even though we've taken a first stab at it. And I'm really excited for all of the work we have ahead of us.
Did anybody else on the panel want to speak to that question and share a vision for Moab? So we've got one more question. If you're not up here in a chair, we're done after one. Come on up.
On the TRT tax, the basic business concept, if you let the marketing budget get too far ahead of the product budget, you have a business problem. So while I greatly admire Moab's pioneers who were able to pivot our community and turn it into a world-class destination, it's really time to change that formula to solve all these other problems. You can't, if you let the marketing budget run away with it, and all you do is put all your money into marketing and you never reinvest, it's a bad business decision. So it's really time to do that, and I think that'll be a good way to reach balance, which is what we're all looking for.
Curtis.
I have to respond because it's Ashley. I agree with that. I think that absolutely my position on it is the county's got to have more flexibility with the mitigation money. We need to make sure that we're doing our part to make sure that we're spending our cut of the mitigation money the right way. We're in a bit of an arrangement that you're going to hear from me in that I feel like the county, and I'm going to have to get after the city a little bit, we're the marketers. But as a county, we're not really structured to monetize tourism as effectively as the city with their sales tax. We have a larger scope of work, so we're really pretty thin. And I would just say, even adjusting the formula, and a lot of folks and lobbyists and people feel like that sends the wrong message to the legislature because we have too much money. Is it the right thing to do? That's one thing to address, to amend the formula, but where does that money go? And with my county hat on, it's important to me that the county and the city are both paying their fair share. I'm not a proponent, like Senator Hinkins, an advocate for more taxes. I think anytime you develop a tax and you tell an industry they get 70% of that to go back into marketing, it's a bit of a bad idea. And I think that's what you're looking at. It's a subsidy for tourism. We have that. It needs to be sustained. Is it time to tweak that model? Absolutely, on the mitigation side. We need to be able to, frankly, I feel like that should be general fund money. We should have the liberty to use that where it needs to go. EMS, infrastructure, you name it. Do we get to a point where, and are we there, where it would be nice to have flexibility in the promotional money? I think the answer is yes. How you get that done when you turn it loose to the folks on the Hill, it's a nightmare. The legislative landscape is ugly. But I just think moving forward, with the economy we have between the city and the county, it's important that we're all paying our fair share.
Mary, did you want to? Nope. Anybody else on the panel want to respond? Huh? You're tired. It's 8:36. I'm impressed.
I'm not going to say anything long, but I think in the grand scheme, we all totally agree on fair share. So yes, let's have more conversations about that.
Anyone else? I just want to say thank you for allowing me to moderate. I didn't really have to answer questions. So with that, I'd like to just turn it back to you to make closing remarks, and then we get to go home.
Thank you, everybody that came. It's been really great. It's amazing how easy it is to get a panel together of these people. They never hesitate. And they're always really excited to help out and participate and hear from the public. And that's extremely important. That's maybe our #1 asset here, other than women rule. So we appreciate you coming. There's so many more topics to finish, and I think Curtis clearly will be here next time because he has a lot more to say, and that's what we want the situation to be. And so we'll plan more town halls on the assumption that they're of value to people, and we need to hear back from you how they need to be altered. Everyone will be different. There will be different topics, and I think we need a bigger, better venue, maybe the high school or something instead. But give us feedback of what you need, and we'll try to provide it. So we really appreciate your coming, and thank you.
Thank you.